And you think this is going on in your family. The thing you have to remember is it's someone's life.
And then you think, it's our lives really, isn't it?
No, not someone else. You. What? Are you taking piss?
Oh, sorry, forgot we're not smoking inside.
Fucking hell.
The rest of it, baby.
When I was 12, my daddy banged his head on a board that were hanging outside a toilet at Kirkgate Market. For months the pain was so bad, you know, that he were bashing his head against the wall. You know, then he died of a brain tumour. Well, I were on doorstep of going to one of them, you know, one of them grammar schools. But my mum couldn't cope, you know, so I stayed at home, you know, stayed off school. I'd always known from very little that my dad had been married before, and I said to my mum one day, "Is he really my dad?" Got my face slapped that hard. I was told never to mention it again. When I was 12, I came in from school one day and Mum, she was proper pissed out of her head like, and she said, "You know you asked me years ago if he were your real dad. Well, he's not."
I didn't know my dad, my real dad.
She told me my real dad's name, it was Jeff.
When I was 2, Mum met Wayne, my stepdad. She had 3 more children by him and also got battered for 12 years. She'd get to the point of leaving him, going to a refuge, and he'd turn up and plead, "I've changed, I have really, I'll never hit you again." So back she'd go, and back he'd start hitting her again.
You know, everything I'd ever believed in were just blown when I was 12.
I was sexually abused with my stepdad. I was 5, but I never told anyone till I was 15. He made me wank him off. If I didn't, he'd hit me. He made me suck it. He said that if I ever told my mum, she'd leave me, abandon me.
At 15, I lost my virginity. They were a big scare, you know. Thought I was pregnant. My mum, she started screaming, "You're a slag!" I knew you'd turn out like me. Not even 16 and you're a dirty slag.
Billy and I used to see each other once a week on a Saturday. And there was this party one night at his friend's house. That's the night I slept with him. I felt loved. He sneaked off to the bedroom. I felt like there was someone there for me.
I left school at 16.
Oh, I'm just 16 and a half now.
Well, my first job was sewing overalls.
I went to work at Yorkshire Union
first on a YTS scheme. Took home 18 quid, right?
I loved it.
Loved every minute of it until the end of the first month. No, she wanted it all. You know, my mum wanted my whole
She took my wage
packet, all of it. She didn't even leave me enough for my dinners. She smoked 66 a day, right? You know, she was always skint. You know, we had smash for tea. All I wanted to do was get married and have babies. You know, I'd just get a job, a wage until Mr. Righty came along.
Next year, I'm going to college to study hairdressing.
David was my first serious boyfriend. Yeah, I was 17. He used to come round and see me, but late like, and I was always tired after work. Right, he'd kick off if I didn't wait up for him. So I ended it. Yeah, 2 weeks later, my mum says, "Yeah, we've got a new lodger." I says, "Who?" She says, "It's Dave. I've said he can stay, so he can." Well, lost my virginity to him. And ended up marrying him. Day of wedding, he tells me he's lost his job. Well, it must have been the Sunday after, right? I'm preparing my stuff for work when Dave, he puts one chest of drawers on top of the other, puts them up against the door, sits on them and says, "You're not going anywhere." Well, if I went into the kitchen, he'd come into the kitchen to see if I'd taken my wedding ring off. If I went into, you know, the bathroom, he'd come into the bathroom, living room. You know, he tried, but I insisted. He won't come into the toilet with me. He used to say, "If you leave me, I'll find you and kill you." Well, I had very low self-esteem, you know. You know, I had lank, horrible hair, no bosom, rotten teeth, never had a toothbrush as a child. In a way, I thought if I left him, I'd never find anyone else. We had a son, Grant. And and a daughter, Debbie. Yeah, we got a house. And we're always really tight with money. You know, like we were very controlling. He were on 12 pints of Guinness a night. He said, I'm not going to stop. I know, I'd try and say stuff like, can't you watch Little Ones for a change? And straight away he'd say, that's woman's work. You wanted babies, I didn't. Left me for our next door neighbour Anita. And it were no great disappointment. Oh, more shock than anything. I mean, she was so ugly. Like back in the bloody bus. Here, Tina!
I was just looking.
Well, I married Alan. Believed I'd finally found the right man for me. You know, the kids loved him, my friends liked him, you know, we shopped together, discussed finances, you know, we shared bills. We shared 4 cans of lager. Well, he's the father of Jamie. Yeah, you could call us happily married. Sunday, October 6th, 1996. Well, he were out fishing.
After that, I just used to sleep out with anyone. It were probably like 30 lads in 6 months. Nothing, none of it meant very much. Not really. That's what my mum said about my real dad. It was just a fling, nothing more. See, all this time I were going with these lads. Stepdad were messing around with me as well.
Sunday, October 6th, 1996. Well, Jamie and Debbie were messing around upstairs. So I sends our Grant up to hurry them up. Comes back down, right? And I'll never forget this. He says, Mum, I'm going to tell you something that'll blow your head off. Tells me what he's overheard. Which is our Debbie saying to Jamie, I want you to lick my vagina. Well, there were alarm bells ringing in my head. You know, where's a 10-year-old girl going to hear something like that? Caught Debbie downstairs into the living room. I sat her down. Well, she wouldn't tell me at first. Don't know if you're familiar with the process of disclosure.
The school counsellor talked about that.
Yeah, well, I started rattling off names, you know, friends, relatives, neighbours. Last person I thought of was her dad. Yeah, well, I knew she'd say no. But she didn't. Just started crying and said yeah. Just sat and cuddled her and cried, you know. You know, just sat rocking her like when she were a little baby. Just sat rocking her for ages.
There were a 2-year period where he didn't touch me.
It's good to know.
And then we're after school one day. It were my first year at secondary, yeah. Mum had gone to the shop and I were upstairs getting changed out of my uniform into trackies. And he come in. He's 37, 6 foot, big built. Skinhead, rough looking, and he hadn't shaved. He never shaved close like, and even when he'd had a bath he still looked dirty. He took me out of bed, pulled my pants down and shoved his dick up me. I was crying because the pain were that bad. I wanted to tell my mum but I didn't know what to do. So I just locked myself in the bathroom till she came home. He made me go on pill as well. I'll never forget what he said. If you tell your mum, she'll leave you.
Well, Alan told Debbie that I knew what he were doing. So there were no point in telling me. You know, that night, I just felt my whole world and everything in it was shattered. Like a mirror, millions of tiny little shards. There were this party, you know, organised by all school teachers, but leavers and that. I knew my mum wasn't going to let me go, so I told her I was staying at a mate's house, and she found out I was lying. She punched us in the head, but I wasn't going to take it this time. I started screaming back at her, fuck you, I'm still being treated like I'm 6, I'm leaving home. And I'll never forget this. She said, hey, I'll help you. She took my suitcase out the window. I spent that night on the school field, sitting on my suitcase cuddling a teddy.
I mean, my school counsellor said to me one day, you're looking down, is there anything you want to talk about?
He was highly sexed, yes. And yes, we had sex every day. You know, everybody asks me that.
So I went into a room and I told her everything.
Why didn't I notice? Yeah, you like notice that he's getting up in the middle of the night and going for a pee. But you're half asleep, you know. You don't know if he's been gone 5 minutes or half an hour.
You know, she made me tell my mum everything. All Mum said was, "You're lying!"
You don't know he's gone into your 10-year-old daughter's room to get her to masturbate him.
She and my auntie drove me straight to social services. Mum said to them, "You take her, because I can't handle her."
Kids were broken. Like the house were broken.
She packed a few of my things in bin bags, chucked them on pavement and just drove off.
It were like holding a whole handful of broken things, right? You know, I had no glue.
I was sat outside social services, right, with my bin bags, crying, and all I could think were, he were right. When my stepdad said, if you tell your mum, she'll leave you. He were right. Next day they put me in care.
I moved to Thorpe Edge. I was sharing a flat with 4 lads. It were a mad house, it were, you know. We were always partying and pilling, partying all the time, really. The house, it were full of stolen stuff. It were too hectic for me, so I moved in with my auntie, and I started going on about my real dad, you know, all the time. I didn't shut up about him. She must have got so sick of me that eventually she told me his real name and that he lived in Shipley.
Whenever I asked about my real dad, she'd just change subject. And then she did tell me his name was Paul. He stabbed a guy 16 times. It were all over a game of pool. He ended up in prison, that's all I know.
So I looked in the phone book. Only 2 G Parkers in Shipley, so I call the first number and I say, "You don't know me, you'll think I'm weird, but I'm trying to find someone." Voice at the other end said, "Is that Marie?" Turned out to be Benny, my dad's best mate, and my daddy were on holiday at the time. Also turned out that my daddy were a drug dealer. And Benny, he said he'd drive me to the airport to meet my dad. As soon as we get there, Benny sees me dad and he jumps over the barrier and he points at me. And I see my dad's lips form words, "Marie." And I were crying by this point. And he walked over to me. We stood in front of each other and he said, "Oh, my daughter, my baby. All them nights I'd cried at my mum's, I'd imagined my dad would be some knight in shining armour." And he were. Oh yeah, it were party time. It were party time every day at that house. And all that time we hadn't been seeing my mum, so my daddy said he'd drive us over, and it was a Saturday, so obviously she were at bingo. 6 o'clock she turns up pissed out of her head. And as soon as she sees my dad, she says, "I've had it first 18 years, now it's your turn." My dad just drove off. A couple of weeks later, Benny said to me that he thought my dad was seeing some woman or something. So next night I watched my dad go out. He were done up to 9s, he wore, you know. One of his fancy waistcoats, it's got about 300, they're bloody disgusting. And 2 o'clock in the morning he turns up. And he said, "Have I got a surprise for you?" And then my mum walks in. Benny saw my face, he took me into another room and he handed me something on a piece of foil which I sucked up with a tube. And I were in heaven. What he gave me was heaven on that piece of foil.
No drugs, nothing like that. I never took drugs.
Me and Benny, we moved out 2 weeks later. Well, even my own kids. You know, no, Grant's been on Wiz. He's a teenager dabbling. I could see him on slippery slope. Benny, he started selling acid for one of his mates, but instead of selling it, we caned it all. And his mate, you know, he wasn't the type of bloke that you mess with, let alone laugh at his face, which is what we did, because we were off our head. He sent some boys around, and you know, Benny, he were quite proud, like, but he proper yelled as the pickaxe went in. He started crying, and like his knee, it split open in an upside down Y shape. It's got a metal plate there now. Well, my whole life fell apart. You know, Grant and I started fighting. All I seemed to do was drink tea, you know, smoke and then drink. Well, Alan went to prison. Yeah, we're just before Christmas. Grant, of course, Grant kicked off because he never got life, but Debbie and I were pleased that at least we've got him to prison. When I had my first kid, I didn't know I was pregnant for 4 months. Being on gear, you know, it messes up your cycle. Then I did a test and, yeah, I was pregnant.
I peed on tab and it changed colour. I were in total shock. Could move for 5 minutes. I mean, it had to be Terry's.
At time I were on solid Charlie, heroin and cannabis. I were also drinking a lot of brandy and, you know, taking them date rape tablets, you know, just to get my head down. When I found out I was pregnant, I stopped with brandy and sleepers. 4 AM, 6th of September. I brought me on water, straining to go for a piss. She must know, right? The mum must know. If it's going on in the family home, both parents must know. I were quite buzzing at the time, like. 5 AM, Benny said he'd drive me to the hospital, but I paused for a pipe at door on way out. We got to hospital, I went into the labour room, lay down, gave 3 pushes, and like a giant poo, out he came. 6:15 AM, easy. Could have been a surrogate if I weren't on gear. The baby, he had a small habit like, but nowhere near as bad as some. 9 that night, I discharged myself. Got home, took a bit of spliff, bit of gay, bit of Charlie. The baby, he ended up with my auntie. Otherwise, he would have been taken away. Now I'm 6 months gone again. Got 65 days to get clean. I'll still smoke a bit of spliff and that, but that's normal, isn't it? Ain't it?
I'm 8 months gone now. I'm having a boy. I've been seeing Terry for a month, and he found out I was pregnant and said to me, "Is it true you're pregnant?" I said, "Yeah." You were like, "Well, it's not mine." So I said, "Fine." Sean is Terry's older brother. We've been seeing each other for 6 months now. He's going to stand by me. We're going to get an house together. I love him lots.
I'm having a boy. You know, social workers, they're helping me move away from Benny, out junkies and dealers. I'm going to call him Luke. If I'd heard someone else, I'd have assumed the mum must know.
Next year I'm going to college to study hairdressing. Go mobile when he starts nursery. I think I'll be qualified by then.
No.
You know, Sean's not very good with money. And I got my 200 quid maternity award last week. I sent him out to get some stuff for baby, and you'll never guess what he came back with.
Spliff.
A Timberland shirt and jeans.
Oh, no.
I could have killed him, the massive, they'll never fit. Still, at least he got all the cotton wools and creams, the shampoos. He got something right. I started thieving since I got pregnant as well. The only way I could get things needed for baby. And my mum's going to be around now, we patched it up.
I used to beat myself up with a big stick and say that everything that went wrong were my fault. Well, my self-esteem has grown.
I'm going to call him Paul, after my real dad.
This baby, you know, it's like the end of an era. I've been on holiday 10 years. Life would be like normal. More boring, but also a relief.
What I'd like more than that, really, is to show my dad his grandson.
I used to be in a rush, you know, jobs, babies, Mr. Right. I wanted everything and I wanted it now. I've learned to slow down.
I don't know where to start.
Yeah, come on, let's go for a ciggy. I have to lend me one, I've run out. Oh,
I've got one now.
Here, Tina, you got 2 of my bags.
It's not, I got 1.
Come on, hurry up. Come on, friend.